What happens when a joke at the office party turns into the moment my marriage collapses? How does it feel to be handed divorce papers at dinner, surrounded by coworkers who only remember the viral video? Can I still call my husband the villain when he's the one who ends things with dignity and I'm left with only the consequences of my choices? The champagne had gone straight to my head, but I didn't care. Standing on the rooftop bar overlooking the city lights, I felt invincible. This was my moment, the quarterly celebration where everyone would finally recognize my worth at Halberd Digital. "Callista, you're glowing tonight," Marina Holt nudged me with her elbow, her voice carrying that conspiratorial tone I'd grown to love. "Dean's been watching you all evening." I glanced across the crowded terrace where my boss, Dean Halberd, stood surrounded by investors. Even from 20 feet away, I could feel the magnetic pull between us. At 41, he commanded every room he entered with an effortless confidence that made my husband Jonas look like a timid schoolboy in comparison. "He should be watching," I replied, taking another sip of my third glass of champagne. "I just landed the Morrison account. That's a $2 million deal." "And how exactly did you manage that?" Marina's eyes sparkled with mischief. She knew. We all knew. The late-night strategy sessions in Dean's office, the business dinners that stretched past midnight, the way his hand lingered on my shoulder during presentations. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Lena. "Saw your Instagram story from the party. You look amazing. Live boldly, sis." The encouragement sent a warm rush through me. This was what success felt like. Being seen, being valued, being desired by someone who actually mattered in the business world. "Ladies, you look like you're plotting world domination over here." Dean's voice made me turn, and there he was, approaching our little circle with that devastating smile that had first caught my attention 6 months ago. "Just celebrating another victory," I said, allowing my voice to carry that sultry undertone that always made his eyes darken with interest. "Callista's being modest," Marina chimed in. "She's been working overtime to impress you, Dean. Haven't you, Cal?" The alcohol made me bold, reckless even. "Well, when you have proper motivation, you can achieve anything. Some people inspire greatness." Dean stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne. "Is that so? And what kind of motivation works best for you?" The question hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning that everyone in our circle understood. I was dimly aware of other conversations happening around us, of phones being held up to capture the glamorous party atmosphere. But all I could focus on was the intoxicating feeling of being the center of Dean's attention. "The kind that makes you forget all about mediocrity," I heard myself saying. "When you've experienced excellence in every aspect of life, it's hard to settle for anything less." Marina laughed, a sound sharp and encouraging. "Oh my God, Callista, you're terrible. But seriously, Dean, you should know that you've completely ruined her standards. Poor Jonas doesn't stand a chance anymore." The mention of my husband's name should have been a warning, a moment to step back and remember the wedding ring on my finger. Instead, the champagne and the thrill of the moment pushed me forward. "Jonas is sweet," I said, the word coming out with more dismissiveness than I'd intended. "But there's a difference between a high school teacher and a real man who knows how to take charge, in business and other areas." "Other areas?" Dean's eyebrow arched, and I could see the dangerous amusement in his expression. The group around us had grown larger, drawn by the magnetic energy of our conversation. I spotted several phones pointed in our direction, but in my champagne-fueled confidence, I assumed they were just capturing the party atmosphere. "Let's just say," I continued, my voice growing louder as the alcohol loosened my tongue, "when you've had a taste of real passion, real intensity, it's impossible to go back to vanilla. Dean knows how to make a woman feel alive in ways that, well, let's just say my husband could never compete." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Marina gasped and started laughing, while several other colleagues exchanged shocked glances. Dean's expression shifted from amusement to something more cautious, but the damage was already done. Callista Vey, you are absolutely wicked, Marina managed between fits of laughter. I can't believe you just said that out loud. But I was riding high on the attention, the validation, the intoxicating feeling of being desired by the most powerful man in the room. Sometimes the truth needs to be said, I declared, raising my glass in a mock toast. Here's to knowing your worth and never settling for less than you deserve. The crowd around us erupted in a mixture of laughter, gasps, and excited chatter. I felt like a queen holding court, finally getting the recognition I'd always deserved. My phone buzzed again, Jonas calling. I declined the call without a second thought. This was my night, my moment of triumph. Whatever mundane domestic crisis he was calling about could wait. You're going to be the talk of the office tomorrow, someone called out, and I preened at the attention. Good, I replied. It's about time people recognized what real success looks like. As the party continued around us, I basked in the glow of admiration and scandal. Dean had stepped back slightly, engaging in conversation with some investors, but I could still feel the electric connection between us. This was what I'd been working toward: respect, desire, recognition as someone who mattered. I had no idea that in a few hours, I would wake up to discover that my moment of triumph had been captured in a 30-second video clip that was already making its rounds through every group chat and social media platform connected to our industry. I had no idea that my marriage was about to become collateral damage in my quest for validation. And I certainly had no idea that my husband Jonas, the sweet high school teacher I'd so casually dismissed, was already 3 steps ahead of me in a game I didn't even know we were playing. The buzzing of my phone dragged me from a champagne-induced sleep at 6:47 a.m. Through bleary eyes, I saw notification after notification flooding my screen: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, work Slack channels, text messages from numbers I didn't even recognize. My heart hammered as I sat up in bed, trying to make sense of the chaos on my phone. Jonas's side of the bed was empty, which wasn't unusual lately. He'd been pulling away ever since I'd started working more closely with Dean, but I'd attributed his distance to jealousy over my success. The first video I clicked on made my blood run cold. There I was, champagne glass raised, declaring to a crowd of colleagues and strangers that my boss was better than my husband in bed. The 30-second clip had been edited to remove all context, making it sound like a calculated, cruel announcement rather than the playful banter it had been. Oh God, I whispered, watching the view count climb past 50,000. The comments section was a nightmare of judgment and speculation. Screenshots of my LinkedIn profile were being shared alongside the video, with people identifying me by name and company. Someone had even found Jonas's school website and was posting comparisons between my successful marketing career and his dead-end teaching job. I stumbled to the kitchen, where Jonas sat at our breakfast table with his laptop open, a cup of coffee growing cold beside him. He looked up when I entered, and the expression on his face was unlike anything I'd ever seen from him. Not anger, not hurt, but something far more unsettling. Disappointment mixed with a cold, calculating assessment. Jonas, honey, about last night, I started, but he held up a hand to stop me. I've seen it, he said simply. 47 people sent it to me before midnight. The school principal called this morning to give me a heads up that it might affect my position if it continues to spread. It's not what it looks like, I said quickly, moving toward him. It was just party talk. You know how these work events get. People were drinking. Everyone was joking around. Were you joking? His voice was steady, almost clinical. Because you seemed pretty sincere about your comparisons. The way he said it made heat flush through my cheeks. You're taking this too seriously. This is exactly why I don't like bringing you to work events. You don't understand the culture, the way people talk in business. It's all about projecting confidence and power. Jonas closed his laptop with deliberate precision. projecting confidence by publicly humiliating your spouse. I wasn't humiliating anyone. The words came out sharper than I'd intended. This is about my career, my success. You should be proud that I'm finally getting the recognition I deserve, instead of making everything about your hurt feelings. He stood up, and I noticed he was already dressed in his work clothes, despite it being Saturday. "Where are you going?" "I have some things to take care of downtown," he said, gathering his papers into a neat stack. "Eva's at my parents' house for the weekend, remember?" I'd completely forgotten about our daughter's sleepover. The realization that I'd been so caught up in work and the party that I'd lost track of our 7-year-old's schedule sent another spike of guilt through me. "Jonas, can we just talk about this like adults? You're acting like I committed some terrible crime when all I did was have a few drinks and maybe speak a little too freely. If you weren't so insecure about my success..." "Success?" He repeated the word like he was tasting something bitter. "Is that what you call it?" My phone buzzed with another wave of notifications. Lena had sent a string of supportive messages. "Don't let the haters bring you down," and "You're a strong woman who knows her worth." But mixed in with the support were screenshots from various social media platforms where the video was being shared and dissected. "Look, this will blow over in a few days," I said, trying to project more confidence than I felt. These things always do. Social media has a short attention span. Jonas picked up his briefcase. When had he started carrying a briefcase? And headed toward the door. "I'm sure you're right. You usually are about these things." There was something in his tone that made me pause, but before I could analyze it further, he was gone. I spent the rest of the morning trying to control the narrative. I posted a carefully crafted Instagram story about empowered women supporting each other and not letting negativity dim your shine. The responses were mixed. Some of my friends and colleagues rallied around me, but there were plenty of others who seemed to be enjoying the drama. Marina called around noon, her voice breathless with excitement. "Girl, you are everywhere. My cousin in Phoenix just sent me the video. You're like actually famous right now." "It's not exactly the kind of fame I was going for," I said, scrolling through yet another comment thread where strangers were debating my marriage and character. "Are you kidding? This is the best thing that could have happened to your career. You're the woman who speaks her truth, who doesn't apologize for knowing her worth." Dean's been getting calls all morning from people wanting to know about the fearless woman on his team. That perked up my interest. "Really? Really? You've positioned yourself as someone who takes what she wants and doesn't apologize for it. That's exactly the kind of energy that gets promotions." After we hung up, I felt marginally better. Maybe this could work in my favor after all. I'd always believed that any publicity was good publicity, and if this controversy was getting me noticed by the right people, perhaps the temporary embarrassment would be worth it. I tried calling Jonas several times throughout the day, but he didn't answer. When I texted asking when he'd be home, he replied simply, "Late, don't wait up." That evening, I attended a dinner party with some college friends, determined to show that I wasn't hiding from the situation. The conversation inevitably turned to the video, but I managed to spin it as a story about workplace dynamics and the challenges of being an ambitious woman in a competitive field. "You have to admit, it's kind of badass," said my friend Rebecca. "Most of us just complain about our husbands privately. You had the guts to own your choices publicly." "Exactly," I agreed, feeling vindicated. I refuse to pretend my life is something it's not just to make other people comfortable. But when I got home that night, the apartment felt different. Jonas's study door was closed, and I could see light underneath. But when I knocked, he called out that he was working and needed to concentrate. I went to bed alone, telling myself that he just needed time to process everything. By Monday, this would all be yesterday's news, and we could get back to normal. I had no idea that while I was out defending my actions to friends who would forget about the whole thing, by next week, Jonas was spending his Saturday in meetings with lawyers, financial advisors, and a private investigator who specialized in documenting extramarital affairs. I had no idea that my husband, the man I'd dismissed as a simple high school teacher, had spent the last 3 months quietly building a case that would soon turn my world upside down. And I certainly had no idea that the work keeping him up late in his study involved organizing evidence that would ensure I lost everything I thought I'd gained. Monday morning brought a new wave of humiliation. As I walked through the Halberd digital offices, conversation stopped mid-sentence, and I could feel eyes tracking my every movement. The video had evolved over the weekend, spawning memes, reaction videos, and even a trending hashtag, how escalate like ITIs. Dean's assistant informed me that he was in meetings all day and couldn't see me. When I tried to catch him in the hallway, he gave me a polite but distant smile and mentioned something about letting things cool down for a bit. The realization that my moment of triumph had somehow become a liability sent panic coursing through me. This wasn't how it was supposed to work. I was supposed to be the bold, confident woman who inspired respect, not the office scandal that made everyone uncomfortable. Priya Shah from HR called me in for what she described as a routine check-in, but which felt more like an interrogation. "Callista, I want to be clear that we support our employees' personal expression," Priya said, her tone carefully neutral. "However, when personal matters begin to impact workplace dynamics or the company's reputation, we need to address them." "I don't understand," I said, though I absolutely did. "I haven't done anything wrong at work." "The video shows you making statements about your supervisor that could be interpreted as inappropriate workplace behavior. We've had several clients ask about the nature of employee relationships here at Halberd." The words hit me like ice water. "Are you saying I'm being disciplined for something I said at a party?" "I'm saying we need to be more mindful of boundaries going forward. Professional relationships should remain professional, both in appearance and in practice." When I got home that evening, I found Jonas in the kitchen making dinner for Eva, who was drawing at the table. The scene looked so normal, so domestic, that for a moment I felt a pang of something that might have been regret. "Mommy," Eva looked up from her drawing, "look what I made." The picture showed 3 stick figures, a tall one labelled Daddy, a small one labelled Me, and a much smaller grey figure off to the side labelled Mommy. The visual metaphor was so obvious it made my chest tight. "That's very creative, sweetheart," I managed. "Daddy's been helping me with my homework every night," Eva continued, oblivious to the tension in the room. "He makes really good mac and cheese too." I looked at Jonas, who was focused on stirring the pot with mechanical precision. "We need to talk," I said. "After Eva goes to bed," he replied without looking at me. Dinner was a surreal experience. Eva chatted about school and her friends, while Jonas responded with genuine warmth and attention. I felt like a stranger in my own home, watching a life that somehow continued without my active participation. After Eva was tucked in, I found Jonas in his study, surrounded by papers and file folders. The organization was impressive and somehow ominous. Everything labeled, sorted, and arranged with the kind of methodical care that suggested serious purpose. "What's all this?" I asked. "Household management," he said simply. "Financial records, insurance documents, school paperwork for Eva. I've been meaning to get everything organized." Something about his tone made me uneasy. "Since when do you handle the finances?" "I've always managed our accounts." "Since I realized I should probably understand our financial situation better." He pulled out a folder labeled Bank Statements and another marked Credit Reports. "Did you know we're carrying almost $30,000 in credit card debt, most of it from your business wardrobe and entertainment expenses?" The accusation in his voice made me defensive. "Those are investments in my career. You have to spend money to make money." "Right. And how much money have you made from these investments?" I stared at him, taken aback by the directness of the question. "My salary has increased 15% this year." 15% of $65,000 is about $9,000. Minus taxes, that's maybe 6,000. So we're spending 30,000 to make 6,000. The math was damning, but I refused to be cornered by his suddenly analytical approach to our marriage. You don't understand how business works, Jonas. Building relationships, maintaining an image, positioning yourself for advancement, these things take time and investment. Building relationships. He repeated my words with that same clinical detachment he'd shown Saturday morning. Is that what you call it? I'm not going to apologize for being ambitious. I'm not going to apologize for wanting more than this. I gestured around the modest study, the middle-class apartment, the careful budget spreadsheets. Some of us have bigger dreams than grading papers and summer vacations. Jonas closed the folder he'd been reading and looked at me directly for the first time in days. What exactly do you dream about, Callista? The question caught me off guard. Success, recognition, being valued for what I bring to the table. And what about Eva? What about our family? Eva will benefit from having a mother who's successful and respected. She'll learn that women don't have to settle for less than they deserve. Less than they deserve. Jonas nodded slowly. What do you think you deserve? A partner who supports my ambitions instead of trying to make me feel guilty for having them. A relationship with someone who understands drive and passion and doesn't want to keep me small and safe and boring. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but I was tired of walking on eggshells around his wounded feelings. This was exactly the kind of mediocrity I'd been trying to escape. Jonas stood up and began organizing his papers with that same methodical precision. I see. Do you? Because I feel like you've been punishing me for outgrowing this life we built when we were kids. I'm not the same person I was when we got married, Jonas. I've evolved. You certainly have. There was something final in his tone that sent a chill through me. What's that supposed to mean? It means I understand the situation now. I understand exactly where we stand and what needs to happen next. He moved past me toward the door, carrying a briefcase I'd never seen before. I have some errands to run downtown tomorrow. Can you pick Eva up from school? The casual way he asked, as if we'd just been discussing grocery lists instead of the fundamental breakdown of our marriage, left me speechless. After he left the room, I sat alone among his organized files, feeling like I'd just participated in a conversation I didn't fully understand. The folders were labeled with titles like property records, insurance policies, and educational accounts. Everything neat, everything documented, everything prepared for... What? I tried to shake off the unease. Jonas was just being Jonas, methodical, careful, probably planning some kind of budget restructuring or insurance review. The idea that my high school teacher husband might be orchestrating something more sophisticated never crossed my mind. I was too busy planning my next career move to notice that he was planning his own. The distance between Jonas and me grew wider over the next 2 weeks, but I was too distracted by the ongoing fallout from the video to pay it much attention. Dean had been increasingly unavailable, citing busy schedules and client priorities whenever I tried to arrange our usual private strategy sessions. Marina kept insisting that the controversy would blow over, but I could feel the shift in office dynamics. Conversation stopped when I entered rooms, and I'd been mysteriously excluded from several high-profile project meetings. You're being paranoid, Lena assured me during one of our coffee dates. This is just typical workplace jealousy. They're intimidated by a woman who speaks her truth. But when I came home Thursday evening to find Jonas's study door locked, my paranoia didn't feel so unreasonable anymore. Why is your office locked? I asked when he emerged 20 minutes later. I've been working on some personal projects, he said, sliding the key into his pocket. Teacher stuff, lesson plans and grade reports. The explanation was reasonable, but something about his manner felt off. Jonas had never been secretive about his work. If anything, he used to bore me with detailed accounts of his students' progress and classroom challenges. Since when do you lock your door to work on lesson plans? Since I started keeping important documents in there. Identity theft is a real concern these days. I wanted to push the issue, but my phone buzzed with a text from Dean. "Can you stay late tomorrow? Need to discuss the Morrison account." The message sent a thrill through me. Finally, he was ready to acknowledge our connection again. Whatever temporary awkwardness the video had caused was clearly passing. "I'll be late tomorrow night," I told Jonas. "Work emergency." He nodded without looking up from the newspaper. "I'll handle Eva's dinner and bedtime." The next evening, I dressed carefully for my meeting with Dean, choosing a dress that walked the line between professional and alluring. I arrived at the office at 7, expecting to find the building mostly empty, but Dean's assistant was still at her desk. "He's waiting for you in the conference room," she said, her tone notably cooler than usual. I found Dean seated at the head of the long table, looking every inch the powerful executive I'd fallen for. But when he gestured for me to sit, he indicated a chair several seats away, rather than the spot beside him. "Callista, we need to discuss your role moving forward." The formal tone sent warning bells through my head, but I maintained my confident smile. "Of course, I have some ideas about expanding the Morrison account that I think you'll find exciting." The Morrison account is being transferred to Bradley's team. The words hit me like a physical blow. "What? That's my account. I landed that deal." "And you did excellent work. However, given recent developments, the client has expressed some concerns about continuity." "Developments?" I kept my voice level, but inside I was screaming. "You mean the video?" "I mean the questions that have been raised about professional boundaries and workplace relationships." Dean's expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the calculation behind his eyes. "HR has recommended that we restructure some of our account assignments to avoid any appearance of impropriety." "Appearance of impropriety?" I stood up, anger overriding caution. 3 weeks ago, you were telling me I was irreplaceable. You were talking about fast-tracking my promotion. 3 weeks ago, our relationship wasn't the subject of viral social media speculation. The clinical way he said it, as if our months of intimate connection meant nothing, sent rage coursing through me. "Our relationship? You're going to pretend this was all one-sided? You're going to act like you didn't pursue me, didn't encourage everything that happened between us?" Dean's expression hardened. "I think you're misremembering the dynamics of our professional collaboration." "Professional collaboration?" I laughed, but it came out sharp and bitter. "Is that what you call it when you had your hands all over me in your office? When you told me I was the most talented woman you'd ever worked with? When you said your wife didn't understand your ambitions the way I did? Callista, I think you've misinterpreted some friendly mentoring as something more personal than it was intended to be." The gaslighting was so blatant, so complete, that for a moment I couldn't speak. This was the man I'd risked my marriage for, the man I'd publicly declared superior to my husband. And now he was sitting here rewriting history to protect himself. "You're unbelievable," I whispered. "I'm being realistic. The company's reputation has to come first, and right now, your presence on high-profile accounts is a liability." I wanted to scream, to throw something, to force him to acknowledge what we'd shared. Instead, I gathered what remained of my dignity and walked out. The drive home was a blur of rage and humiliation. I'd sacrificed everything for a man who was now pretending our relationship had been a figment of my imagination. The injustice of it, the sheer cowardice, made me want to post everything, the texts, the photos, the evidence of our affair, just to watch his carefully constructed image crumble. I was so consumed with plotting my revenge against Dean that I almost didn't notice the strange car parked across from our building. Almost didn't see the man with the camera sitting in the driver's seat, documenting my arrival home. When I got upstairs, Jonas was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner, moving with his usual methodical efficiency. Eva was in the living room, absorbed in a tablet game. "How was your work emergency?" Jonas asked without looking up. "Fine," I said automatically, then caught myself. Why was I protecting Dean's version of events? Actually, it was terrible. Dean threw me under the bus to save his own reputation. Jonas nodded as if this was exactly what he'd expected to hear. I'm sorry that happened. The sympathy in his voice was so unexpected that I felt tears prick my eyes. I gave everything to that job, to that company. I worked harder than anyone else. I delivered results. And they're punishing me for one moment of honesty. Is that what you call it? Honesty? The question stopped me short. What else would you call it? Jonas turned to face me, and in his expression I saw something I'd never seen before. Pity. I'd call it consequences, Callista. I'd call it the bill coming due. Before I could ask what he meant, Eva ran into the kitchen and wrapped her arms around his waist. Daddy, can you read me a story? Of course, sweetheart. He lifted her easily, and as they headed toward her bedroom, I heard Eva ask, Is Mommy sad? She looks sad. Sometimes grown-ups have difficult days, Jonas replied, but everything's going to be okay. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it filled me with a dread I couldn't name. That night, I lay awake listening to Jonas move around the apartment with unusual purpose. I heard him on the phone in his study, speaking in low tones that I couldn't quite make out. When I crept to the door to listen, I caught fragments. Documentation is complete, and Monday morning would be ideal, and she won't see it coming. I told myself he was probably talking to another teacher about some school administrative issue. But deep down, in a place I wasn't ready to acknowledge, I knew that my husband was planning something that would change everything. I just had no idea how thoroughly he'd already won a game I didn't know we were playing. The investor dinner at the Grand Meridian Hotel was supposed to be my comeback moment. Despite the setbacks at work, I'd managed to secure an invitation through Marina's connections, and I was determined to show everyone that I wasn't going to slink away in shame. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a black cocktail dress that projected confidence and sophistication. If Dean wanted to pretend our relationship had been purely professional, fine. I would show him exactly what he was giving up. The ballroom was filled with the city's business elite, and I worked the room with practiced charm, networking with potential clients and industry contacts. Several people recognized me from the viral video, but I'd perfected a response that reframed the incident as a moment of authentic self-expression. Sometimes the truth makes people uncomfortable, I told a group of marketing executives, but I'd rather be honest about my standards than pretend to be satisfied with mediocrity. The response was mixed, but I could see that some of them were intrigued by my boldness. This was the energy I needed to capture, the woman who refused to apologize for knowing her worth. Marina found me at the bar during cocktail hour. You look absolutely stunning, she said. Dean's been watching you all night. I glanced across the room where Dean stood with a group of investors. When our eyes met, he looked away quickly, but I caught the flash of something that might have been regret. Let him look, I said, taking a sip of my wine. He knows what he lost. Have you thought about going public with everything? I mean, if he's going to throw you under the bus anyway, why protect him? The suggestion was tempting. I had photos, text messages, hotel receipts, enough evidence to destroy Dean's marriage and reputation. The only thing holding me back was the knowledge that exposing him would also expose me, and I wasn't sure my own marriage could survive that level of scrutiny. I'm taking the high road, I said finally. For now. As we moved into the dining portion of the evening, I found myself seated at a table with several prominent business leaders. The conversation was stimulating, focused on market trends and growth strategies, and I felt myself coming alive in the intellectual environment I'd been craving. Callista has some fascinating insights about consumer behavior, Marina told the table. She's been instrumental in several major account acquisitions. I launched into a detailed analysis of the Morrison campaign, carefully omitting any mention of my recent removal from the project. The response was enthusiastic, and I could feel the familiar rush of professional validation. My phone buzzed with notifications throughout dinner, but I ignored them. This was too important to be interrupted by social media drama or work emails. It wasn't until dessert was being served that I finally glanced at my screen. The messages were from Lena, increasingly urgent. "Call me now," and "Where are you?" and "Callista, you need to see this immediately." I excused myself to the ladies' room and called her back. "Thank God," Lena's voice was breathless with panic. "Have you been online at all tonight?" "No, I'm at a business dinner. What's wrong?" "Someone posted photos of you and Dean, from his office, from restaurants, from hotels. They're everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And there are documents too, like financial records and legal papers. Someone's trying to destroy you." The words hit me like ice water. "What kind of documents?" "Bank statements, credit card bills, text message screenshots. Callista, they have everything. And the photos. These aren't just casual pictures. Someone's been following you for weeks." I sank onto the velvet bench in the hotel's elegant powder room, my mind racing. Who would do this? How would anyone get access to our financial records? "I don't know, but you need to get somewhere private and start doing damage control. This is everywhere." I hung up and immediately started scrolling through my social media feeds. The evidence was overwhelming. Professional quality surveillance photos of Dean and me entering hotels, intimate text message exchanges, detailed financial records showing my spending on clothes, dinners, and travel. But the most damaging element wasn't the affair documentation. It was the financial analysis that accompanied it. Someone had prepared a comprehensive breakdown of our household debt, my income versus expenses, and the timeline of my relationship with Dean. The presentation was methodical, professional, and absolutely devastating. The narrative it told was clear. I was a woman who'd destroyed her marriage and family for a man who'd never intended to leave his wife, racking up massive debt in the process and publicly humiliating my husband for the sake of a promotion that would never come. The comment sections were brutal. People who'd initially defended my honesty were now calling me manipulative, delusional, and pathetic. Screenshots of my recent social media posts about knowing your worth were being shared alongside the financial documents showing that I'd spent our daughter's college fund on designer clothes and business dinners. I was still staring at my phone in horror when Marina burst into the powder room. "Callista, you need to come back to the dining room. There's someone here to see you." "I can't deal with reporters right now. It's not a reporter, it's a process server." The words didn't compute at first. "A what?" "Someone's here with legal papers. They asked for you by name." I followed Marina back to the ballroom in a daze. The dinner was still in progress, but I could feel eyes tracking my movement across the room. Near our table stood a woman in a business suit, holding a manila envelope. "Callista Vey?" "Yes." "You've been served." She handed me the envelope and walked away, leaving me standing in front of a table full of business leaders, holding what I somehow knew would be the final blow in a war I'd never realized I was fighting. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. The documents inside were precisely organized, professionally prepared, and absolutely comprehensive. Jonas was filing for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and providing detailed evidence of my affair. He was requesting primary custody of Eva, based on my unstable lifestyle and poor financial decision-making. He'd already secured temporary restraining orders, preventing me from accessing our joint accounts or removing Eva from the state. The financial settlement he was proposing left me with virtually nothing. The apartment, the cars, the savings accounts, everything would go to him and Eva. I would be responsible for the credit card debt I'd accumulated, and my income would be garnished to pay child support and alimony. Most shocking of all was the timeline. The papers showed that he'd filed 3 days ago, which meant he'd been planning this for weeks, possibly months. Every conversation we'd had, every moment of seeming normalcy, had been carefully orchestrated while he built his case against me. I looked up to find the entire table watching me, with expressions ranging from curiosity to pity. The murmur of conversation in the ballroom seemed to fade as the reality of my situation crashed over me. My marriage was over, my career was in ruins, my reputation was destroyed, and my husband, the man I'd dismissed as a simple, boring teacher, had outmaneuvered me so completely that I was left with nothing but the consequences of my own choices. The process server was already gone, but her presence had been noted by everyone in the room. Tomorrow, this would be another viral moment, another humiliation to add to my growing collection. I gathered what remained of my dignity and walked toward the exit, leaving behind the dinner, the networking opportunities, and the last remnants of the life I'd thought I was building. I found Jonas waiting in the hotel lobby, seated in one of the leather armchairs with the calm patience of a man who had all the time in the world. He was dressed simply, khakis and a button-down shirt, but there was something different about his posture, his expression. He looked like someone who'd finally stopped pretending. "You," I said, the word coming out as an accusation. "Me." He stood up as I approached, and I noticed he was carrying that same briefcase I'd seen him with for weeks. "How long?" My voice was shaking with rage and something that might have been admiration. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the night you came home at 3 a.m. with Dean's cologne all over your dress and told me you'd been working late on quarterly reports." Jonas's voice was steady, matter of fact. "That was 4 months ago." 4 months. While I'd been congratulating myself on my sophisticated affair and growing career success, my husband had been building a case against me with the methodical precision I'd always found so boring. "You had me followed." "I documented your activities, yes, along with our financial situation, Eva's needs, and the timeline of your relationship with Dean." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Would you like to see the evidence? It's quite comprehensive." I stared at the folder, knowing it contained the destruction of everything I'd thought I was building. The photos, the financial records, the social media posts, that was all you. I wanted to give you a chance to end it yourself. The public humiliation wasn't necessary, but you seemed determined to escalate the situation. Jonas closed the briefcase with a soft click. "I tried to warn you, Callista. I tried to give you opportunities to step back and consider what you were risking." His calm voice carried steel. Every late-night question, every mention of our debt, every quiet concern about Eva's confusion, he'd been handing me lifelines I'd thrown back in his face. "You destroyed my career," I whispered, grasping for dignity. "I documented your choices. Your career ended the moment you chose public applause over private loyalty." "Dean cared about me." A faint, bitter smile. "Dean's been married 15 years. You're the 4th in 5. Marina knew. She helped him manage the others." The betrayal sank deep. Marina, my cheerleader, had been complicit all along. "Why wait so long?" I asked. "Why not just leave?" "Because I wanted you to choose us. Because I needed Eva protected." He slid the papers across the table. "Sign or we go to court. Everything becomes public. The affair, the debt, the priorities. The judge will decide the same way, just louder and more expensive." I looked at the pen, at the man I'd dismissed as safe, predictable, boring. He'd never played for applause. He'd played for our daughter. I signed. Jonas stood, documents in hand. "For what it's worth, I hope you find what you're looking for." He walked away. 6 months later, I was starting over in a studio apartment, seeing Eva under supervision. Dean had moved on. Marina had ghosted. My old circle had faded. But when I watched Jonas, steady, devoted, quietly keeping every promise, I finally understood. He hadn't destroyed me. I'd destroyed myself, trading the one person who truly saw me for the illusion of being seen by everyone else.